out all their latest rounds of international games. Obviously, with a strong focus on South Africa. Also, we'll bring you up to speed with what's been going on in the domestic game, as well as looking at the wonderful thing that is the World Rugby Rankings. And to do all of that with me, I have Mr. John O'Connor. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, in yourself, mate.
Not bad at all, not bad. I've had a really interesting weekend, actually. I've been to 5 games over the weekend, 2 Farah Palmer Cup and 3 Mice 10 Cups games.
Are you sure you've watched enough rugby this weekend?
And then I've watched highlights of, I've watched all the other Mice 10 Cup games and highlights of as many international games as I could get my hands on as well. So
okay, you should be okay then.
But one of the things that happened to me this weekend that I've never had the opportunity to do before was to sit with a head coach during a game, and to listen to him. So basically, in the coach's box, and listen to what he's saying on the radio down to the sideline. Now, I only got one side of the conversation, but that was really interesting to watch.
Okay. Which coach was this?
This was the head coach for the Manawa 2 Farah Palmer Cup team.
Okay.
Give you some behind the scenes view as to how provincial rugby here works. They held a double header in Pocono at Navigation Home Stadium, and they didn't have enough coaches' boxes, so hence he came and sat with the media. Now, I was the only media there, so he sat with me in the media box. And then during the first half, it sounded like the building was collapsing, and we had a base, and some of the ceiling fell in. So I had to quickly run outside and found that some technicians were laying cables across the roof. I'm guessing it was Sky or Radio Sport or something like that. And yeah, basically had not stood on the beams, nearly fallen through the roof.
Well, first of all, that's a heck of an indictment on the way the women's game is treated, right? There was a little bit of an infamous incident on Saturday in the United States where 2 neutral, let's call them 2 non-college. Let me start again with my list. At Kent State College, 2 non-Kent State women's hockey teams were there for the weekend, and they were playing each other. So this was a neutral match on a AstroTurf field. Started at 9 o'clock in the morning, and it went into double overtime because Americans, they don't go with draws, right?
Yep.
And they were informed, sorry, you can't play the second overtime, even though the scores are tied. The game has to be declared a draw, which meant that a result in the rules, because we want to set off a fireworks display prior to this afternoon's football, American football, college football match happening in the stadium next door, right? So it's not even a scheduled game. It's not even, it's a fireworks display in the middle of the day, right? And they were told push off. So it's caused all sorts of angst, and there's been an apology from the athletics department of Kent State University, and just about the way the women's sport is treated, right? And they said we got that wrong and everything. But listening to what you said about how in the middle of the game they're laying cables, while the coach is trying to coach, it's just an example. I do appreciate, though, you explaining to all of us that you weren't invited to join the coach. He had nowhere to go. It's not that you've cracked the nod. It's more like if he were the only boy in the world and you were the only
girl.
Well, I was going to finish that sentence, but anyway.
Yeah, okay, there was fine. Yeah, they're true. And I mean, I've talked to a number of. I've talked to 6 or so Farah Palmer Cup coaches now during the season. So I've got through quite a few of them. But it's been enlightening around some of these things. So, for example, one of the teams has got a scrum coach this year, and I said, "Oh, so you've doing the interview?" Said, "Oh, so you found some funds to pay for a scrum coach?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, we've got a scrum coach. He's volunteering like the rest of us." And suddenly, I I only clicked after the interview that it's like, hang on, the rest of us, as in, I'm talking to the head coach here. So is the head coach a volunteer and not even paid? So,
Wow.
so that I need to follow up on in future, future interviews. Also, another thing is that the female teams the Farah Palmer Cup teams, unlike the Mitre Cup teams, are considered professional teams. Now the Farah Palmer Cup teams are considered community teams, which enables them to get different types of funding, but it also means they're not eligible for sponsorship. So we have one of these sort of strange situations where if they accept sponsorship, they'll lose their other funding. So hence, it's a bit of a balancing act as to when do you switch yourself from being a community team to a professional team, and all of these fun and games. So it's not as easy as it's not simple running these unions and these sort of things. Now, and I get that community funding shouldn't be put into. We shouldn't have Super Rugby teams applying for community funding and getting it, but to then say if you take any sponsorship, you're considered a professional team, so you can't get community funding. It's how do you get to that tipping point?
Well, it's very important, I believe, to have these women's teams. And I don't just mean rugby. Rugby is a terrific game, and we enjoy it. That's why we're talking about it. But to have aspirational role models. Good mate of mine, his daughter is playing senior club rugby. She's 16, and these Black Ferns players are heroes to her, right? And the amazing thing is that she gets to play club rugby. She comes off the bench. She's just made her debut this season, but she gets to play with some of her heroes who still play. They still play in the club scene. So this is very important, right? We know that all the studies have shown the value of exercise when it comes to lifestyle and making good decisions and all these kind of things. This is well worth funding, I would imagine, when it comes to being able to maintain. And it begs the question as well, if the coaches are all volunteers, we have seen, and I know we're probably going to touch on this, we've seen the tremendous effect that a coach has in rugby. And the perfect example is Rassie Erasmus with the Springboks. Mm-hmm. And there's this absolute sea change in their performances. And it's sort of filtering down all the way through the different layers of South African rugby, and in the enthusiasm and engagement in young people in South Africa as well. So, anyway, lots of things to talk about.
Yeah, lots of things to talk about. So, getting on to our news highlights, the NRC is going on. We're into round 2 now of the NRC, and I guess the kind of story here is that Fiji lost to the Western Force this weekend at home, and it shows that I think the Fiji Drua are not going to be at the same level as they have been in the last couple of seasons, because they've provided something like 10 players to the Fiji national team at the Rugby World Cup. So on one side, it shows that the Fiji Drua are doing a great job providing those international players. It also shows that, that obviously that if you lose 10 players out of your squad, you're in trouble.
Okay, so just rewind a little second here. You're talking about in this championship that the Western Force is part of.
Yes, this is the National Rugby Championship. So you've got Fiji Drua, Western Force, Melbourne Storm, New South Wales Country Eagles, Brisbane City, the Sydney Rays, Queensland Country, and Canterbury Vikings. So this is the Mitre 10 or Currie Cup equivalent for Australia.
Okay, all right. Now that's great. I see that. By the way, I see that Herman is been waiting to just.
Yeah.
Oh, there he is. Hello, sir.
I've been here for 10 minutes now almost. I thought, boys, you really are ignoring.
Well, he's Swedish. You know to ignore anybody.
No. I'm Swedish, mate. I'm Swedish.
Isn't that Paul? Don't just ignore everybody who's European.
Well, we're trying to, yes. So we're trying to get rid of it, trying to extract them.
Now I blame to Paul.
And Brits, exactly. Yeah, yours, Collins. And unfortunately, frozen. But we are a very multicultural match show this evening, obviously New Zealand based. We've got a South African and the person from Sweden. So yes, we are global and
You
allowed.
mean he's not a Swedish person from Denmark, or a Swedish person from Germany?
So, dialing in from Sweden.
From Sweden.
But
I am from Sweden, but I'm half German, so you're my father German. So
but he's physically in Sweden as well. Anyway,
yes,
Okay, yes. Okay,
Back-
right. Thanks for clarifying.
back to the NRC. Yes, so yeah, the force going big guns there. The I say the Fiji Drua not be quite as strong as they have been in the past, and it finally looks like that New South Wales might be getting their act together and be something like competitive for a change.
Right.
Moving
I'm
on.
very glad because I was a bit, you were trying to say the team is going to be that competitive. I didn't realize the difference between two competitions because I have high hopes for Fiji. It was last year they beat France, the year before, Paul.
Last November, yep.
November they beat France, and I think they could provide some serious upset. They could probably affect the final. I'm not saying necessarily they'll go through from the group of death that they're in. It is the group that they're in, right? Australia
And Wales, yeah.
and Wales, yes. But it might fit who goes through. You know? So anyway, and
Yep. Just running quick through. The Curry Cup happened at the weekend. Curry Cup final. Sorry. Congratulations to Cheetahs. I was surprised here. Yeah, Cheetahs in white, and why were the golden lions in blue? Shouldn't they be in orange and red?
I think the Lions would be in an away strip, and traditionally the Cheetahs over the last many decades, going back to probably before World War II, played in white shirts as a Curry Cup team. In white shirts with orange trim, the sort of similar to the Bok colours, and black shorts. So that's their traditional colours.
Okay, so the Cheetahs in 14 rugby have had different.
but
So
I think
they've gone, which is for the orange green.
That finished 31-28, but was at 31-7 with 10 minutes to go. So yes, a real grandstand finish in that one.
See the crowd.
It was a big crowd. I watched. Yes, I just watched highlights. Admittedly, not the full game.
It was a massive crowd. I don't know, we could probably look up the numbers, but it's something like 38,000, 40,000 people. And good on Bloemfontein for supporting their boys. They even had a jumbo jet flyover, like 95 World Cup final, echoing that. Find the clip both of the over the stadium. You can also find posted on social media. You Google it. You can find a clip inside the cockpit on approach. And the funny part is, the whole way on approach, you just hear the auto warning system saying, pull up, pull up, pull up, too low, pull up, too low, pull up. Oh, yeah. Anyway.
Oh dear. I want to get on to internationals. So briefly, yeah, top 14 is going on. Nothing particularly jump up there at me, except I guess clubs to breathe. But it's the top 14 at the moment because the number of players being through nationals and things like. But that was the biggest bet weekend. Being. We've also seen Cup going on. Show last night. But if you're looking for a game to watch, North Harbour versus Waikato, 38-36, with a try on the buzzer to finish the game off. That was a crazy game. So that was definitely worth a watch. Bay FC versus Wellington, 15. Again, another close game. So a couple of really cool games in 10 Cup over the week. Before we get into the international, I guess, or the international game, a hat tip to Pocock, who has basically announced his international retirement after the Rugby World Cup. I think we all saw that one coming, but he has been he's been a stalwart for them, hasn't he?
Yes. I mean, sadly, his injury has plagued him. He could probably be remembered as one of the great Wallabies of all time if he hadn't had all these injuries. He's down as a very, very good player, but I think, like two injuries have hampered his career a bit, actually.
Yeah, particularly recently.
Sorry, Jan?
Said knee.
Yes, but also with I mean, being strong over the ball as he is in a breakdown is probably not helping him long term either, because player coming hanging just doesn't move but take the hits. And usually a normal person, we would probably fly 5 meters and realize.
But yeah, very true. So that was no big surprise there. But the game I want to get onto, and it was the first international game of the weekend, Japan versus South Africa. So John, this was being billed as the revenge game. Do you think that got to the players as well? This was more than just a normal Test match?
I think it was being billed as a revenge game outside of South Africa and outside of the Springbok squad.
Yeah.
I don't think they had any, and I don't really think in South Africa it was viewed like that either among the rugby fans. This was seen as a warm-up. There's a tremendous difference between a competitive in-tournament game and a warm-up, which is what this was, right? And I think, there's such a long distance that the Springbok squad has traveled since the last World Cup that I don't think there was any sort of relating between the two. Obviously, there's some players that played in both matches. But yeah, I don't think that was part of their view at all. Sorry, Herman, I just wanted to point out, we're only seeing you in profile, like some sort of Ocean's 11 split screen image. So you can turn your camera a little bit more towards you, because all we're seeing is we're only seeing you from here.
Really?
You're good on YouTube. I'm not sure about the how Skype is working.
I don't know if the right side of your face is a bit dodgy, but the only thing we're seeing is the left side of your face. I don't know if you want to swing that camera a little bit more to your right. Yeah, there we go.
This?
Oops.
Like this? You see the lighting goes.
No, we got you in profile. Yeah, so getting back to your question, as Herman hides again.
No, I'm not hiding. It's Paul who's doing something. I'm right in the middle of a camera here.
Blame Paul. Blame Paul. Paul's fault.
Of course. That's the go-to. You told me.
He's trying to Brexit you.
Yeah.
Oh, dearie me.
But to be fair, John, I saw quite a few columnists and fan comments about this is revenge. Now we're gonna hammer those Japanese for it. But I totally agree with you. But from the Springbok camp, they didn't buy into that at all, not at all. Which is good to see, because focus on the right things. Because to be fair, that game has nothing to do with this current Springbok team. Nothing.
But what's really nice to see about the way the Springboks are playing now, and maybe we're getting into stuff that you were wanting to tee up a little bit more, Paul, but the previous that squad that played 4 years ago seemed to play with such a sense of fear, right? Whereas there seems to be so much more joy and sense of fun in the way the Springboks play now. And the second thing that really stands out to me is that under Heineke Meyer and under Alistair Coetzee, there were times when I watched the box and they looked clueless. They looked like they didn't know what they were doing, right? The ball got to somebody and somebody was like, what do I do with it? What's the plan? What's the story? And that really doesn't seem to happen with Russell. People really understand their roles and or they understand that they are allowed to play what's in front of them and to trust their instincts and go for it, right? And you see that with certain players like Cheslin Colby and the wings and the way that they play, that they've given them that leeway to know what, we trust you, go with what you instinctively want to do. So yeah, so it's very different now.
Sorry, Paul.
No.
Sorry, I got some microphone issues here. Let's see. Come on. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're good.
Sorry. I gotta fix it up. Please go on, Paul.
Okay. No, I was going to. There was. You're right. You especially see that with those wingers. And to be honest, if you're going to pick wingers who are as elusive as those guys are, the only thing you can do is let them play. They're not system wingers. You have to, if you're going to pick those kind of guys, that's how you have to play them. And you say that he's giving them free rein and giving them the confidence and backing them to do so, which is great to see.
Well, I would love to see those two wingers play outside of Francois Steyn at 12, rather than De Allende, right? So De Allende is the younger incumbent, but he really doesn't distribute well. Whereas Francois Steyn has got a great pass left and right, and I would love to see the ball get wings in space a little bit more creatively. But yeah, we'll see how that unfolds as the tournament progresses.
I always want to reconnect what you say about the former coaches, and especially with Alistair Coetzee. It was so obvious also after every single Springbok loss. He never took any responsibility whatsoever. It was always a player's fault. I mean, that's the worst coaching I ever seen. And compare this with Russe, who takes complete responsibility for everything. But I mean, this obviously gives the players a lot more confidence. Also, in a way, it correlates to that you heard the talk from the Springbok camps now, that it's actually the players who have much more of an ownership of a game now. But that ownership of it comes from a complete trust from Russe, and he basically tells me, I got your back. That's my take on it, at least.
I think, to go back to a coach who took a lot of flack, especially in the international media, but actually I had a lot of time for, was Peter de Villiers, right? And in many ways, he may have been the source of the wonderful soundbite, right? But actually, he did a lot of that. He actually had the players back tremendously, and they actually were very fond of him, right? And I think that he did some very good things with the Springboks. But for some unfortunate, let's call it refereeing blind spots or the swallowing of a whistle, we may well have seen a Springbok. In fact, I'm really.
I'm with you. I mean, I was always kind of surprised with Peter de Villiers.
Semi-final against the All Blacks. Sorry, you were going to say, Herman?
No, but with Peter de Villiers, I was always kind of surprised. I mean, he was obviously not like a perfect coach, but he got really ridiculed and humiliated by so many. And that's a coach who beat the All Blacks 3-0 with the British Lions in the Test series. How? I mean, that's serious results. And still, it was like everyone else forget about. Had nothing to do with him. He was just lucky to get that. But
yes,
pardon my friends, bullshit. You're not lucky if you win 3-0 over the All Blacks.
No, you don't. You can certainly stuff it up as a coach. So if you win a Test series against the Lions and you beat the All Blacks 3-0 and you administer to them their biggest loss ever, points-wise, right? And you win three matches in a row, including a win in New Zealand. You don't fluke that. Obviously, he had generational players, right? And there's no substitute for the players. But he wasn't the terrible coach that he was made out to be, right?
And if I may round that up, sorry for interrupting, but I mean, regular watcher of this show know I hate ref bashing, but there are a few games that are worth mentioning where the referee got it wrong. And Springboks Wallabies quarterfinal 2011, my God, Springboks were robbed him. And a certain Pocock, that must have been his biggest Christmas Eve ever. He were allowed to do whatever he wanted, He was, even as a neutral rugby fan, it was hurtful to watch that game. Now I said it.
You can't blame Pocock. That an open sider's job is to.
I don't blame Pocock. He took
what he gets away with, right? And that day, he seemed to have stolen, or at least borrowed, Harry Potter's cloak of invisibility. It was the number of times he, from the wrong side, and when he was off his feet, prevented a try being scored.
Yeah, it was a shocker. It was a shocker. And.
Yes. But also what we forget is that around the 10 to 12 minute mark, Heinrich Brousseau went off injured. And Skalkberger shifted to blindside and shifted to open side. And Skalkberger, for all his brilliance and for all his impact as a rugby player, at his core is was never a true open sider. In other words, in Jake White's system, which was very structured, where they would know we're going to go from this scrum, we're going to go right 3 times and then come back twice and then go right again. He knew exactly where the rucks were going to be if the Springboks had the ball, and so he could clean out people like McCaw or Pocock because he knew where it was going. But under Alistair Coetzee's system, which gave a freedom to the players to play what was in front of them, you needed a true open sider who could clean away somebody like Pocock, who went to the ball instinctively. And once Brousseau was gone, Pocock had free reign, got more and more emboldened by Bryce Lawrence swallowing his whistle, and that's history. But then again, the Springboks didn't have another true open sider to come on and to deal with Pocock, and they paid the price for it.
But do I remember it correctly? Hasn't Bryce Lawrence come out afterwards and said he got it wrong in that game? But he's been open about that. Am I remember this wrong? I don't know. All right, never mind. Paul,
to bring us back to the modern day. But no, fantastic reminiscing, guys. Gareth Mason, G-Man on who's a really good YouTube channel as well, says with regards to Stein over Damon, he agrees. But Andre reckons that his only worry is about Stein's lack of pace, and that you're not going to see him bursting through from 12, but you are going to see much better distribution.
De Allende not quicker, but De Allende is not a speed merchant either. Let's be fair, right?
No, but he's quicker, though.
He is quicker, but you're not going to see Francois Steyn missing tackles. Not that I say De Allende would. So, but what I do like is his distribution and his giving of a kicking option at 12. Right. So, for tactical kicking reasons, whether that's a chip, a grubber, kicking for the corner, whatever it may be, taking the pressure off the 10, he does provide that other option. Right. So, whatever happens, it's that channel. Whoever's playing there, whether it's De Allende or Francois Steyn, that second channel, let's work it out. So from a maul, the first channel out is close to the ruck. So the second and third channel out are not places where you really want to truck the ball up if you're playing against the Springboks, because with Pollard and De Allende or Francois Steyn there, this is not going to go well for you.
No. Talking of Pollard, one of the things I also saw, particularly that jumped out to me in the build-up to the third try, they had a ball that had some red lines at the end of the ball, obviously being in Japan and a white ball. And when you saw Pollard passing it, it just turned into a red dot that was spinning through. His spin pass is technically fantastic. Then you're seeing the next players, everyone else, and it was a bit sort of pinkish as it all wobbled around. But with him, it's a bullet pass, and his passing is really jumped out at me during this game.
I think he's done a lot of work from when he was younger. When he first came into the Springboks, he had a very unfortunate tendency, and if you watch the All Black backline, technically they are so good. What happens is they take the ball here. They stay square on shoulders and especially hips, and then they pass. If they're passing to the left, they stay square on like this. You with me?
Mm-hmm.
And to the left, they stay this, which means they fix the man. What Pollard used to do is when he passed to the right, he turned like that and passed it like that, right? And if you're a defender, as soon as you see somebody turn their hips, you know the ball is going, because if I'm pointing my left hip at you like this, it's very hard for me to then come back inside that way. Whereas if I'm front on and I've got the ball in my hands like this, I can step either direction, right? So, but I think he's worked really well on his ability to be able to pass like this. So you'll see the All Blacks, and if you ever get a chance to see them warm up before a game, go a little bit earlier before a test match, it's tremendous to see how quickly they will move the ball through their hands, boom, 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 like this, taking it from in front of them and feed it on, but keeping that front on stance, which fixes the defender. So yeah, I think he's definitely worked on that in the last 3 years, and you're starting to see that improvement. The only thing is, if it hits Dialende, it just almost never seems to go past him.
No.
So he crashes the ball up, but everybody knows he's going to crash the ball up. But if he distributed it, because everybody's expecting him to come straight on, I think there would be chances to find some space out wide.
But also he would get more chances to break the tackle as well, because the players have to think about it. Whereas currently, you know what's going to happen. The only question really is, can you stop it? There's no questions as to what is going to happen.
Correct. That's a miss. Oh, let me try again with an underestimated skill that Ma'a Nonu had was his ability to distribute, and it got better and better and better the longer he played. Yep. So everybody knew him for his incredible strength and barging, but actually he could spread the ball really well.
Yep.
Totally agree. The way this game pretty went, from what I could tell, was basically that South Africa totally dominated the first half. Japan did better in the second half, but just couldn't break down the South African defence, and South African counterattacks took the game away. And that, to me, that's kind of the story of the game. Great first half by the Springboks, and Japan never managed to really get themselves back into it on the scoreboard.
Yeah.
Did you?
I watched the game. I thought Japan were a wee bit unlucky. They played. That scoreboard was not a true reflection to the game. Springboks was clearly the better side, but the margin was way. We had two soft tries in the last 5 minutes that blowed up the score a little bit, and Japan was desperately close, scoring 2-3 more tries. To big props to the Springboks defense for holding up, but if I were a Japan fan, I wouldn't be too negative. I thought this was probably a great hit out for them. Now we got what could be better preparation for them to play Scotland and Ireland and play a fully fledged Springboks team. We didn't really get it off, but still they could take some confidence out of that. At least that's my take from that game. They can play rugby now, Japan. They can.
They can play. Let's not joke around. They play beautiful rugby. But there are two caveats to what you were saying, Herman. One is that Rassie Erasmus afterwards stated that they deliberately played a style and chose a tactic that would put the Springboks under pressure to prepare themselves for the All Blacks. Mm-hmm. So they deliberately chose to give the ball to Japan so that they would have defense test in that game.
Yep.
Right. So this is why I say they didn't buy into the revenge match of putting as much points on the table as they could. Is they deliberately kicked the ball to Japan and allowed their defense systems to be tested. Right.
Oh, I agree with it.
They scored 4 of their 6 tries off turnover. Right. Yeah. And basically what he was saying is, if this was during the World Cup and we weren't preparing, we wouldn't have played that way. So they had something like 35 or 37% possession because they chose to give it away as a warm-up. So that's number one. Number two is the tremendous trouble that Japan had in the set pieces. So not only were they in trouble on their own line-out throw, where they had a number of balls stolen, and I recognize the fact that the Springboks had a tremendously tall line-out. With Peter Steph du Toit at over 2 meters tall playing on the blind side, they effectively have 3 locks. And Dwayne Vermeulen as another line-out jumper at the back. So they can really contest well. But Japan struggled to secure their own line-out ball, which is going to cause them all sorts of trouble against the top-tier nations. And the other area where they really struggled was in the scrum. Again, I recognize the fact the Springboks have got a tremendous scrum, both the starting lineup and the team that came off the bench. The 3 that came off the bench, where they replaced the entire front row, is the same 3 that absolutely monstered the Australian scrum, and that's the 2 props and the hooker that come off the bench with 30 minutes to go. So South Africa has great strength there, but when it comes against those top tier nations, whether it's Ireland, England, France, New Zealand, whatever it may be, this is a problem that Japan is going to face, is securing their primary position.
Agree. But again, I thought that's even better for them to test themselves against probably now the best set piece team in the world. And if I may add, if we're going to take everything Rassie Erasmus said by face value, he was very open about the scoreline flattered the Springboks after the game too.
Oh yes. He said a couple of things nearly went wrong, a couple of things went well for them, and maybe if they hadn't been far ahead at halftime, they would have changed tactics. But they stuck with those tactics, and they stuck with tactical kicking and the contesting. But he said basically, we know that we got turnovers from tactical kicks, and we won't get that many if we are tactically kicking against the All Blacks, but we needed to test our defense. But again, the nice thing about listening to Rassie Erasmus is you get a sense that there is a plan. You get a sense.
Oh yeah, about everything, about everything too.
That's right. There is a plan, and you can't expect the coach always to have the right plan. Coaches are human, but you do expect the coach to have a plan, and a plan B, and a plan C. And there's a sense with Rassie Erasmus that is the case, and it reminds me of what I heard. Nick Mallet say many years ago about Rassie when he first started coaching in South Africa. And remember, Rassie Erasmus retired because of injury quite young, somewhere around about 30, and got into coaching very early. And Nick Mallet, who was his coach in the late 90s, said that he was an extremely cerebral player. So before any of the other players were into that sort of thing, he would be taking the old VHS tapes and going backwards and forwards and searching and doing analysis and doing video analysis and the early packages on laptops. He'd be spending hours and hours doing analysis and breakdowns and giving them to the coaches what he saw and what he'd identified. And it was very unusual 20 years ago. So he's always been a very professional, very cerebral analyst of the game. And I think you're starting to see that attention of detail coming through in the Springboks.
I heard that too from former trainers and also players with Rassie Erasmus early in his career, but he's been coaching for a long time. he's been a coach since he was 25, but still playing.
Yes.
But I want to get another thing about Rassie. Sorry, Paulie, I know we have to move on, but something.
I'll sit back and leave you guys to it. Go on.
Yeah, you should. That's what a good host do. When your guest hits it off, you let them talk. That's what a host does. No, but also just to hammer in. Yeah, get that red wine you got. I don't have any red wine. I want to talk. I finished. Oh, but another bottle then. Another bottle then, Paul. No, but needs to. I think it needs. It can't be enough times about Rassie. It's look how he has diffused the whole political issues around the Springboks. It's a complete non-issue now. I mean, and for 2 years ago, we thought that was impossible even to do, and it's gone. You got to be some kind of smooth operator to achieve that in South Africa today. I mean, you could probably fill in more about this, John, but from the outside, I'm just well done.
Well, you're getting onto one of my deep breath topics here, mate. And that the problem in South African rugby is not politics. It's not having to select non-white players. It's not a quota system. It's not. These are all red herrings. And as a Swede, you should exactly get that analogy, right?
Yep.
Right. It's a smokescreen. The true problem with South African rugby has been leadership. It's been a paucity of good leadership, right? You cannot tell me when you see the quality of what appears to be the third choice wing, Spoo and Corsi, and you see the 2 tries he scored against Argentina, the second one of which I don't know how many wings in the world would have scored that try, right? Absolutely world class. You can't tell me when you see the performance of the all-black African front row that smashed the Wallabies, that those players deserve to be there. You've got the Beast, who is now the most capped prop in Springbok history, and I think is only behind Brian Habana, another non-white player, and Victor Matfield for the most number of Springbok caps. So you're seeing, and the other tremendous thing that I saw in the semi-final of the Currie Cup, which was the Sharks versus the Cheetahs, and then in the final as well, was how many incredibly skilled, incredibly dynamic black athletes were playing in both that semi-final and the final. And the player of the match was the black hooker playing for the Cheetahs, whose name escapes me. But Paul, seeing as you're doing nothing in the show, you can look it up.
Well played, Jan.
So he was man of the match, right? And so it was never really about selecting black players, but it was an excuse to hide behind bad leadership. And I will give you just very quickly, because I know Paul's got things that he's going to start itching if he doesn't talk about soon. But I'll give you very quickly an example. Jake White in his book. So this is a good 10 years ago, 12 years ago. He talks about coming back the year of the World Cup, coming back after the December Christmas holidays to his office to start the year campaign. So he's now in the headquarters of South African Rugby to his office as the Springbok coach. And now we're going to plan this year's campaign to win the World Cup. And his office had been packed up and all his stuff moved downstairs into the basement, into a little office next to the air conditioning unit. Right? Because they wanted him out. Right? They advertised his job internationally during the World Cup. South Africa is looking for a Springbok coach. They are in the middle of the tournament and they advertise Jake White's job. Right?
Yep.
And the third one is, by that stage he was never staying, because the relationship between him and the bosses of South African Rugby was so even though he won, which in some ways I wonder whether or not the bosses, as perverse as this sounds, would rather that he didn't, right? But after they won in 2007, they then had to choose another Springbok coach. And they had Heineke Meyer, who had just become the first South African coach to win Super Rugby. They had Alistair Coetzee, who was non-white and was the assistant coach to the team that just won the World Cup. And they had Peter de Villiers. And they said that they went with Peter de Villiers because it was an affirmative choice, right, to choose a non-white coach. It was time. The thing is that they don't point out is that they had the assistant coach who had just worked with this generational set of players, right, who just won the World Cup. But they didn't want to give it to Alistair Coetzee then because they hated Jake White so much. So you think about it, it's difficult to think about it now, but at the point, Springboks were the number one team in the world, and they were the most marketable commodity in world rugby, because the All Blacks and the Wallabies had gone out in the quarterfinal. The Springboks were the most valuable marketing commodity in the world. They gave that team to Peter de Villiers, who had not only never coached at Super Rugby level, because the same people that gave him that job wouldn't trust him with their own teams, their own home union teams, right? But not only he'd never even coached a major Currie Cup team. So it's like saying, would New Zealand Rugby give the All Black team to the coach of the Bay of Plenty in the Mitre 10 Cup? That's the highest he's ever coached at senior level. So that is the level of leadership that has been running South African rugby. When they brought Rassie in, they brought in a coach that could succeed in spite of all the rubbish that goes on in the leadership of South African rugby. And that's what's done. He's created, similar to the Blitz Booker to the Sevens team, an oasis of excellence in amongst a morass of incompetence.
Okay, so Joseph Weber, DWEBA, is the player that you're talking about from the Currie Cup final?
Yeah. Spell it for us again.
DWEBA, Joseph Weber. Dweber?
Dweber.
Dweber.
Double B or single B?
DWEBA.
It's pronounced Joseph Dweber.
Joseph Weber.
Not like Weber.
Silent
like Weber with barbecue.
Well, no, but then it's a braai. It's not a barbecue. But And just small technical thing for those people who are listening, who are from New Zealand. A better example is Taranaki. The Because of Air Plenty coach also coaches the Maori All Blacks. But anyway, that's by the by.
So that's a better. There's a better one. Taranaki coach. There you go.
Yeah. A few other things I want to take from this game. Peter Sepsatoy, 50th cap. Congratulations, sir. Takayua Gited for Japan. Congratulations on your first cap. And I think the thing that really brought down Japan and ruined them was the fact that Tony Brown was wearing a baseball cap and not a flat cap. I think that's got to be rectified for the Rugby World Cup.
Yep.
Get Tony Brown in a flat cap, and then all their problems are sorted. It's theirs to win.
Yeah, terrible mistake.
Mistake. Moving on then to the rest of the other games. Scotland beat Georgia 36-9, but it was 10-9 at half-time, which shows you that was pretty close before Georgia collapsed. And
Just
again,
a quick,
sorry?
At that high level, when you see that happen, is the difference between the level of professionalism in the Tier 1 nations and Georgia is played out in fitness.
Yeah, especially when you see if you look at the Georgia's team, their pack all play overseas, but they have a number of players in their backs who still play in the Georgia League and don't play at top flight professional rugby. And that's where you're finding it falls apart.
Yeah, you know, that level of fitness comes over years of training to be able to last through the whole game. And
it's not a fitness issue, Jan. Sorry, it's not a fitness issue. The Georgian players are really fit. I mean, I've been watching pretty much every Georgia test, since many. And I've been watching both games against Scotland now too. Fitness, they are okay. They are more than okay. It's whistling, it's handling. They set themselves up in so many good positions, but they just blow it. You know, they have execution under pressure. It's a big problem for Georgia.
Look, I agree with you.
They got gas in the tank. Believe me, they got gas. Both forwards, they're smashing it all for full 80 minutes. They do.
The forwards, yes, but I think there are a number of the backs, because they're not a fully professional team yet, a fully professional squad. There are a number of the backs that will, and it was holes in the backs that started to open up in that second half.
But they train as a professional. The one who's back home in Georgia trains as professional, lives as professional. The problem is they don't face that kind of opposition. That is a problem. It's not a fit. I just want to be clear. It's not a fitness issue.
That jump up.
Yes.
That jump up to suddenly seeing the opposition coming at you at that speed.
Yep.
Positioning yourself correctly when suddenly the level jumps like that.
Yes. And that, you can only get that through experience, obviously. And that's the first problem is, of course, that these players don't play in big European clubs. Yeah. And the second problem is that Georgia don't face Tier 1 nations enough times. They need to face this kind of... But I also think we should be a little bit, because Georgia has played a few tests now against Tier 1 nations. So I think some people should probably hold their breath a little bit, screaming too much about Georgia's inclusions in the Six Nations. If you compare with Italy when they were allowed in, they had pretty much beaten all the other teams in the Six Nations except France and England. Look at Argentina before they were allowed to join the Rugby Championship. They had taken some serious scalps then. And now
they'd been number 3 in they come third in the Rugby World Cup.
World Cup, but also and you can see now that it's a lot of talk about Georgia should join the Six Nations, but there's literally no talk about Japan should join the Rugby Championship. And I'd say Japan should be a discussion closer in time, because
of course they should.
Yeah, I think so too. I think we're probably. I mean, sports maybe might need look at our first 4 years will probably be a hard time. They will lose a lot, but we need those Japanese yen down in the Southern Hemisphere rugby for sure. That's what we should.
I would say Japan and the USA. I'd say the USA are also ahead of Georgia as well.
You would say so, but we're not. But
gentlemen, so much of the decision making in rugby is not based on what is good for the game. It's based on what is good for me and mine.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, but this is a serious problem in rugby. Look at just our world rugby structurally. I mean, I think Steve Hansen gets away with an awful lot when he's sending a message up to World Rugby without ever. So, Steve, who's running World Rugby? It's the Six Nations. Oh, but no, Steve, it's the Six Nations and your boys who are running it, you know. And if you're not happy, it's like he's saying is that the Six Nations should change. But no, but you have the power too. because World Rugby is run by the old boys completely. Just look how their voting system is. It's the most undemocratic sporting organization in the world.
Yes,
it's ridiculous.
It's it's better than it was, but it's still a long way from being anywhere near good. But that's a rabbit hole I really don't want to go down.
Yeah,
okay.
right.
We'll stay away from it.
England beat Italy 37-0, but it was only 9-0 at half-time with 3 kicked penalties. So, and both Scotland and England did not put out first-choice teams. England actually played their outside centre isn't even going to the Rugby World Cup, which so yes, this was not a first-choice team by any stretch of the imagination. But yes, a good 9-0 half-time lead, 3 penalties. That's nice English play. That's what we like to see. That warms the heart.
But we have to be fair on England. They like South Africa. They're looking like they're coming into really nice shape for this World Cup. I mean, they're ticking a lot of boxes at the moment, England.
But how? We don't. I mean, they've not played.
You lived in New Zealand too long. I mean, they've been hammering you down for being a Pomber for so long. So you think being a Brit is worth nothing by now. But in the rest of the world, when we watch the England play, we're pretty impressed. I can tell you that.
I guess my question mark is at the moment. I just don't the side that Eddie's put out. I think pretty much a different side every single game, and none of them have looked like the first choice side, right?
And what other team hasn't done that? I mean, if you're going to be like that, what were the standards we're comparing with here?
Well, no, both New Zealand and South Africa have put out sort of. You've probably seen their first choice or close to their first choice team out about twice.
Twice. But they played one more extra game too than the other ones.
Yeah, but I don't think I have seen England's first choice team at all yet. I don't think they're going to play together until the actual Rugby World Cup, which.
What you saw against Ireland is very close to the first team.
Okay, we'll see if that is. Yeah, okay, that's the. Hope so. I hope they have been together once, but so far I've been looking at it going. As I say, Rudy McConaughey and I've gone blank as to the outside centre's name, but he's got his debut this week, and then he's going to the Rugby World Cup next week with 1 cap. Wow.
But he's there as a backup, Paul. I mean, how can you focus on play? He's literally player number 31 in the squad, and he's the one you choose. I mean, you're a little bit negative here. You know?
Maybe I'm a bit negative, but it does feel like it's come together extremely late by England. Whereas there are other teams and I think that's perhaps been a bit of a theme for this Rugby World Cup is that teams have come together pretty late. Australia have come in together at the last minute. They've not played well until the last few months. England.
If you really break down the World Cup, I mean, if you really want to win it, you got to get it together for 2 weeks, 3 games. That's it for the top nations. That's what you really got to aim for. To look like $1 million right now, it's not worth that much. It's a good sign. But that's quarterfinals and final. That's what it's all about.
Sure, and I'm not worried at the fact that Wales have lost their last 2 games because, but that's off the back of the fact that I've seen them over the last year heading in the right direction. Okay, so I know they're coming together, and that basically they've used these last few games, maybe around conditioning, maybe around maybe they haven't done right ball play. So I'm not worried that they've lost their last 2 games against Ireland, for example. But for England, they didn't look great in November. Didn't look great at during the Six Nations.
They looked fantastic away against Ireland in the first game.
But whereas I've seen, maybe I'm right.
Did they not look great against Ireland in the Six Nations?
Against Ireland, they did.
No one has beaten Ireland in Dublin for years. Paul. That was the first loss for Ireland in 3 years in Dublin, and England put a proper beating on them. And you're not gonna. I mean, Paul, you got to go back home to the island soon. Yeah, I mean, you need.
Okay, interesting one here. Andre reckons that says that England, Wales, Ireland, New Zealand, the box have all won 7 out of the last 10 games heading into this Rugby World Cup. And I've done a video about this. I think they're the 5 teams that can win this Rugby World Cup. I don't think the winner will come outside those 5. I don't. Even though Australia have suddenly come much better, I still can't see them.
Australia has a good draw, also. That's what helps them too.
I think what Herman is saying that has great relevance is the World Cup. You need to win 3 consecutive high-level matches, right?
Yep.
And the issue that Australia have is I don't think they have enough powder, especially not having Israel Folau, to win 3 consecutive high-level matches, getting harder and harder, especially if you're tracking towards beating a team like the All Blacks, right? So what the All Blacks have done in their last win in 2015 is they've blown apart the idea that you win a World Cup just on defense and ability to kick goals. What they showed is if you're going to want to beat them, you need to have strike power. You need to have game breakers that can put points on the board, because especially the All Blacks, they are coming for you in 5s and 7s, right? So if you don't have strike power that can break down the modern defense, so whether that's the kind of mercurial athlete that Folau is, or whether it's somebody who can generate line breaks like Sonny Bill with offloads, or somebody with the sort of speed that Beauden Barrett has to come from the back if he's playing at fullback, to exploit mismatches where the forwards might be in the defensive line. Whatever the situation might be, if you don't have the ability to break a modern defense over 3 matches, maybe not 1, maybe not 2, but over 3 matches, somebody's going to find you out, because you won't be able to match their strike power and their ability to score. Right. So the real question
I think if we look at those teams we talked about,
will Eddie Jones unleash his athletes? Has he got something that he's hidden away where he'll allow them to actually attack in the way that he would if he was coaching Australia?
I mean, to be fair to him, he's got players like Johnny May, who is very quick. Elliot Daly as well. Both of those guys can do it by pace from the back. So you've got Manu Tuanlangi, who can do it through a bit with force as well. So yeah, he's got the players. I mean, Ireland do as well with players.
Definitely do.
But for being a Northern Hemisphere, I have never seen England have more quality back players than we have right now. They have depth and they have world-class quality in several back positions. And even the 2003 team didn't have this many top level players. I mean, they are dangerous now, England, if they get the ball out wide. Really dangerous. I mean, Tulagi, I mean, we'll see if he can. But he's a little bit of an... I mean, it's a little bit of an enigma, you know. But when he performs at his best level, you can make a case he's the best player in the world. He's unstoppable, it seems, almost, when he's on fire.
And also, what's underestimated about Tulangi is that he does distribute.
He defend too.
So you've hit the nail on the head. That's what makes him dangerous. Is he can distribute. That's not to be counted as a danger, you know. But it's a question of what kind of game plan is Eddie Jones going to be rolling out? Because if besides the typhoon and heavy rains, but for that, you know, by the time that the end of the tournament comes around, we're kind of expecting to have high temperatures, hard fields, and everything conducive for fast-flowing rugby, rather than the heavy laboured, wet fields of the Northern Hemisphere winter.
Yeah, that's what we'll probably talk about next week. Is the fact if you look at players like, and that's why Owen Franks isn't going. That's why Samson Lee isn't going for Wales, and Wales have dropped their 2 best scrummagers because they don't do enough around the park.
And Devon Toner, you can add to that too.
Devon Toner again, for Ireland, another player doesn't do enough around the park. I've never been as aware of players being picked for the conditions as I have for this Rugby World Cup.
But it's kind of weird too, because the last 3 games is going to be the last 2-3 weeks in October and beginning of November, and then it's not going to be that warm anymore. It's still going to be nice weather, but typhoon season is going to be over. The tropical weather is going to be over. Then it's going to be regular spring weather or late fall, like nice fall weather.
It's not going to be, but it's going to be Northern Hemisphere under turf, you know, under the boots.
Hard pitches.
Yeah, a little bit harder pitches, but it's a tricky one. I mean, also being in November. Have you been to Twickenham? I mean, that's a very nice grass field they got there. That's no sludge field. That's people feel, it's the Northern Hemisphere, thinking like this old when you think like it's hammering down rain, it's all brown. When was the last time we saw Twickenham even close to that?
Oh no, they spend a lot of money on Twickenham, and it is a very, very good pitch. I mean, the turf on it is fantastic.
And in Cardiff, they play under the roof. I mean, it's.
But okay, but there's
we're
going to be playing on football pitches, which generally it's slightly harder than rugby pitches. They're designed to be harder than rugby pitches as well. So, but yeah, it's not. But we're not going to have a mud bath in any of these, or heavy wet play. I don't think. But that's.
We might in the group stage when the big rain comes in.
If
the big. But I think the point that we're making here is when it comes to the rugby players themselves, don't look at Twickenham or Cardiff. Look at what the players are playing in each week. Right?
Yeah.
So when they play their club games, and what is the dominant weather like for the majority of their season, and what they are accustomed to playing in.
Yeah, and I do. Like, just sorry for interrupting. Look at the Aviva Premiership. Almost, I think, half of the team have these 4G fields that stay pretty much perfect when you mix it up with some artificial grass. They stay perfect all through winter. And you can see that in the change of play in the Premiership also the last couple of years. It's a lot more attacking rugby. It's like old myth of a slugfest up at north, where you win games 9-6. That rarely happens in the Aviva Premiership. I mean, if you want to really look at the
Southern Hemisphere players playing, mate. That's what.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to be really, we like to compare the final in the Aviva Premiership and the final in the Super Rugby. Now, the Super Rugby final was a bore fest. That was a slugfest, boring condition. And when you see the Aviva Premiership one between Saracens and Exeter, that was like champagne rugby on a perfect field.
What date was it played on? What was the date?
Late May. But they have the experience. I read so many comments about this, like, oh, the Northern gonna suffer because of weather, and I always ask the same question back, and I never get an answer. Oh, since when we don't have warm weather in Europe, and since when did New Zealand become a tropical nation? I mean that.
This begs the question, Paul. Why doesn't the Northern Hemisphere shift rugby to be played in summer? Why would you want to compete against soccer?
That is going to be a topic post-Rugby World Cup we're going to sit down and talk about, because when we have a gap, because that is... no, that was noted the other week. I've had a Patreon, one of my supporters has come back and said he disagrees with you, and yeah, that's when we're going to properly sit down and discuss.
Make sure you invite me and John to that show, because I'm firmly on the other side of the fence. Why doesn't the Southern Hemisphere switch their season to going to get? But we're not going to discuss it today. But be prepared. Yeah. Be prepared. We're going to have a big.
I don't care who switches. But we should be on the same schedule. So we should be on the same schedule. And considering the major money generator in the world is the Northern Hemisphere,
so
consider the major opposition to eyeballs is soccer. And considering the best weather in the Northern Hemisphere is in summer, that's why, if we're going to switch, it makes more logical sense to switch to the Northern Hemisphere summer.
We will have an hour-long show discussing this one point.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Post-Rugby World Cup.
I think it's a topic whose time has come, right?
Yep.
And it's something that we should approach. And I've been watching the NFL season has just opened up, and I've watched quite a bit of NFL and looked at their presentation.
Me too.
And their
what about Brady? Right back in the fold, like nothing happened. He's still the GOAT.
and when you look at the excitement. Sorry, what did you say about back in the fold there, Herman?
Tom Brady, he is going on. The GOAT.
Yes.
Amazing to see.
And there was an absolutely awesome game on Monday night, which was the New Orleans.
No! Don't tell the score. I'm gonna rewatch this game. This was just played. Don't tell the score. Don't tell the score. I gotta.
The New Orleans versus hang on, the Houston Texans, right? Yeah, brilliant game. But the point being is there was so much excitement generated because they've been waiting 8 months. They've had a serious off-season, and the anticipation is just so much. Whereas I heard today, Super Rugby starts on the 31st of January. That is madness. It's madness.
We get Paul, but I just want to ask you one question about here to you. What is worst for you? What we talk about soccer on your show, or what we talk about American football on your show? What is you?
Soccer. That is definitely
Soccer?
the worst one.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Oh, you can
Anyway.
actually watch an NFL game if someone forced you?
Oh, yeah. Yes, I would definitely. And I was about to tell you that Tom Brady's catching core, the 4 players, they've all been in the sort of top for receptions or for meters made like 2 seasons ago, and he's managed to pull these guys together. So he's got it. Not only has he, whilst they might not be the sort of have the best stats recently, they're quality guys who are coming towards the end of their career who fancy getting a ring, and he's got a quality receiving core there as well. It's not just him throwing to nobodies. But anyway,
he drops his own salary so he actually could have more money to sign with other players so he can win more.
Yep.
Not many professional athletes doing that.
So
in his career of nearly 20 years, Brady will have 2 Hall of Fame receivers ever. He's just got one now.
Yeah,
and Antonio Brown has just gone there, and he had another one who's
I forget. I know which one, but the one with
his face in front of me. But in his entire 20-year career, he's got 2 Hall of Fame receivers. Right.
Yep.
That's incredible.
He's a goat. It is you can't compare. I mean, he's. But enough of Brady, I guess, Paul.
Enough of Brady.
Yes.
Just.
What was the topic we were trying to talk about? Was it rugby?
So I'm sorry, guys. We've not had time to talk about New Zealand beating Tonga 92-7. Ramwick losing to Argentina 0-74.
What was the possible relevance of that game, except that Steve Hansen made sure that Josh Ioane would never play for another nation? That was the only.
Josh Ioane is in a good spot to play for the All Blacks next season. Barrett's going to go to Japan. Yeah, Barrett's going to go to Japan next season.
Josh Ioane might get in the All Blacks in 4 years' time, but he's not.
Well, they've made sure that he's not going to wind up playing for Wales or England or whatever. But to me, look, this is controversial, but I think he is a better bet than Richie Mo'unga. Long term.
Long term, yes.
Yeah, that's just because he hasn't been around it for 3 seasons. He's younger, right? But to me, he is absolutely tremendous.
No, I'm convinced he's going to be in the All Blacks setup next season for sure, especially with Barrett in Japan.
No, Barrett's only in Japan for the Super Rugby. Anyway, moving on. Ramwick lost to Argentina 0-74. Australia beat Samoa 34-15. Michael Alaalatoa played against his brother, which was interesting. Michael Alaalatoa playing for Samoa. Ireland beat Wales 19-10, but Wales were putting players in cotton wool, whereas that was, I think, pretty much a first choice Ireland side, or much closer anyway.
Ireland were good. Ireland were good. Ireland's coming. Some people was writing Ireland off, but I think it's interesting actually. But the 2 teams that have been coming back pretty strongly in the last couple of weeks. Both Ireland and New Zealand got proper hammerings against England and the Wallabies, and they have really just improved that. Sometimes it's actually the best thing that can happen to you preparing for the World Cup. Get another team just completely pull the towel away from you, so you're very skinny nippy, and show all your flaws, so that you can start a dream. And Ireland don't count them out. That's one of the few teams that can beat both the All Blacks and the Springboks. So that first game is going to be, if I was a Springboks All Blacks coach, I would make sure I avoid them in the quarterfinal. I would much rather play Scotland. Because Scotland has to, because Scotland basically have to play the game of their lives to beat the All Blacks and the Springboks.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Scotland also have to come off the back of beating Japan as well, because that's their last pool game. So they've not got an easy game before. A bit like when we're talking about England, teams only having to win 3 games on a trot, but England's last two pool games are Argentina and France. They've got 5 Tier 1 games back to back if they want to win the Rugby World Cup. Anyway, Namibia beat the Southern Kings. Sorry?
Can I ask a question? Can we finish with who are your dark horses? Who do you think could cause an upset, like a serious upset in the World Cup? And let's finish the topics you wanted to address, but maybe we can close with that.
Okay. Russia lost to Connacht 14-42. Russia will not be causing an upset. Uruguay lost to then Argentina 15, and Canada lost to the United States. Just to give you that wraps up all the action from the weekend. So, as in dark horse for winning the tournament or actual upset game?
Okay, let's maybe make it both. Do you have a dark horse that can win it, and do you have a dark horse that could cause an upset in the pool stages?
Okay. Yep. For all of my supporters, if you go to patreon.com/, I've done one video which says who are the teams that can win the Rugby World Cup. I've done one video last week saying the 3 most likely upsets at the Rugby World Cup. So those 2 videos have been done. But anyway, we'll still talk here about that kind of stuff.
Tell us who are the most likely upsets. Tell us your upset.
The upset that people aren't talking about, rather than necessarily the most likely upset, is the I've gone blank. So the most likely upset is Japan versus Scotland. That's
right.
A likely upset, definitely, because Scotland's got a short turnaround. They'll have played Russia the week, sort of 3 or 4 nights before. Now, sure, they'll put out their second string side, obviously, but you've got to play 23 players, and there's only 31 there. So not every
kind of payback for 2015. It's kind of payback for 2015 when Japan short straw against Scotland with that.
So that is clearly the biggest chance of an upset. There is a hidden upset, and the problem is I can't find my schedule. But
all right, but you go then, John. While Paul looking for his schedule.
Gentlemen, I think Argentina are very dangerous.
Yeah, they always are. But I mean,
Argentina may not have performed as we would have hoped in the 4 nations in the Rugby Championship, but I think Argentina are really capable of upsetting even England in the group stages. The reason being is that Argentina, some years ago, let's go back maybe 4 years ago, took to heart the advice given to them by Graham Henry, maybe even longer, 6 years ago.
You got to score tries.
He said to them, if you want to avoid, basically what he told them, if you want to avoid embarrassment, continue playing the way that you play, where focus on the forwards, tactical kicking, and keeping the score down. If you want to actually win, you have to embrace a ball-in-hand approach, a balanced approach between conservative rugby, tactical kicking, and being prepared to attack ball in hand. And they do play a wonderful brand of rugby. They're very skilled with the ball in hand. And unfortunately, what seems to have happened to them in the last 18 months is their forward play has dropped off. And I wonder if they maybe have persevered with some of their old forward warriors a little bit past the ideal use-by date that sometimes happens, and they haven't enough done young athletes in the forwards. Certainly, I don't think England is to playing against a team like Argentina, who is prepared to hold the ball and run at them, and run at them, run at them, which Argentina has shown their willingness to do against teams as strong as the All Blacks. So, yeah, I fancy Argentina for an upset. Argentina, same group as England, Wales, correct?
England and France.
England and France. And I see Argentina could win of those 2 games through to the quarterfinal.
But I agree with them. We will with England, though. But we shall. I agree with. But my big takeaway from Argentina is basically lessons now from some of the losses now in championships. Then they very years, But they haven't really taken on lessons, especially about Springboks in Salta in that game. Then they will be in trouble. So I would probably say, so cliche, but France, I don't really see them making the huge upsets. I think they are. I mean, top 14 doesn't really prepare you as well for test rugby as it should be. But they're on the side of a draw. If they get the right way, and a French team, when they start flying, they are terrible to play against. So the big 5 I've been mentioning, for me, it's only 4 teams that really I have It's Springboks, All Blacks, England, and Ireland. I see who potential winners who can really go all the way through. But outside of it, Wales, no. With Wallabies, maybe. But France is probably, you can never ever count them out really. But probably 4 years too early for them. And then we have upsets. Yeah, I think Fiji is going to give Wallabies a run for the money. We're probably going to give Wales a real run for the money too in the group stages. But
yes,
yeah,
I agree. That's my dark horse team when it comes to causing it is Fiji.
Yeah. Paul, you found your papers now?
I can't share it on screen, which is what I'm trying to get it to share on screen, which is the problem. So there is a kind of hidden possibility of an upset that I don't think people are looking at, and it's going to be along the same lines as you're thinking, but the other way round. Argentina play England on Saturday, the 5th of October.
Mm.
And then on Wednesday, the 9th of October, 4 days later, they have to front up again against the USA.
Mm-hmm.
The USA will have a 7-day turnaround. Argentina will have had a 4-day turnaround.
Yes, that could be very tough.
The problem for the USA is they've got that game, and then they have a 4-day turnaround to Sunday when they play Tonga. So, do they go for the Tier 1 scalp, or do they go for beating Tonga and saying, yes, we've got a win?
Well, the USA, if they want to go through to the quarterfinal, they know they have to beat Argentina, Tonga, and one of the other two. Right?
Yeah, but so they'll have lost to England and France already, I think.
Yeah. No, they're not good enough.
This is at the end.
Maybe actually that's the other side of the coin with France. You could see France starting the tournament in a shocking mode and actually lose a game against Tonga or USA. They could actually do it. Yes. They've done it before.
You're 100% right. It's like which wine did they drink last night? Exactly. You're 100%. They could beat England. They could even beat the All Blacks, and then they could lose to Tonga. It's exactly what they did in 2011.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So my hidden upset is that potential Argentina USA game, because Argentina have a short turnaround against England, which would be really so. That's I think that would be a massive shock to everybody, quite rightly. But if you look in the tea leaf, if you look at sort of how it's all bubbling up, there's a possibility there.
Yep, there is.
And dark horses to win.
As I say, I think it's between the top 5. I can't see anybody outside of New Zealand, South Africa, Ireland, Wales, and England winning this competition. And wouldn't it be fantastic if Ireland, for the very first time they get past the quarterfinals, actually went on to win it?
Well, yeah, good for them, but I don't really care. Good on them. If they do it, they do it.
So there you go. That's my kind of dark horse to win the whole thing is Ireland.
What is your dark horse to win, Herman?
No, I would say that. I mean, in one way, we put Ireland as one of the teams that can win it. But if they win it, it would still be kind of an upset. It would for a team that never gone past the quarterfinals before to reach all the way. But they could, because if they get it all together, and let's not forget they have been extremely impressive both against both the All Blacks and the Springboks in the last World Cup cycle when we've been playing. I mean, Ireland on a good day is nightmare team to play.
But who is your outside of New Zealand, because they're obviously favourites? Who is your next? Who are the dark horses to win it all? Then, Herman, if you don't think
outside New Zealand, outside New Zealand, England. I'm probably in that corner out now. I have only New Zealand as the third favourite. I'm predicting an England Books final.
Wow. Okay.
Yep. Wow.
John?
I think the Boks are very dangerous. Right.
Yep.
I really do. I think when it comes to sheer rugby talent, the South Africa is over the last 100 years, the only team that produces the rugby athletes that are up there with New Zealand. And it's always been about coaching and structures and leadership that determine whether or not the Boks challenge New Zealand for supremacy. It's never been about sheer physical talent, right? They do have some generational level rugby players in that team. I mean, the Boks take, if you count Peter Steph du Toit as the fifth lock, they are taking, although he's playing on the blind side for the last more than a year, they take 5 players to the World Cup in the locking position. Any one of them would get into the squad for any other team in the world.
Yep.
Right. So they may not start in front of Retallick and Whitelock, but they would certainly go to the World Cup. Any one of those 5 players would go to the World Cup for in any other squad.
Yep.
So there's a depth of athlete there, and they are starting to embrace some abilities that traditionally have not been recognized in South African rugby, which is just that thing that takes them to the next step. The fact that they first choice right wing is Cheslin Colby, who traditionally would have been considered way too small. The fact that they played of what was available due to injury, that their first choice team to play against the All Blacks included Kwagga Smith at 85 kilograms on the open side.
Yeah.
Right. This is a sea change in thinking, that you would play an 5-kilogram player in a Springbok loose forward trio, right? So there's an openness of thinking that's coming across their coaching at the Springbok level, at least, which is very encouraging, and it makes them dangerous. So I think the Springboks are a dangerous team. I have no
very much. I mean, may I add about Cheslin Colby? He's really our a figurehead of a change, because I might use too strong word, but in my book, from what I've seen so far from the test season, he is Springbok's best player overall. He just doesn't make mistakes. He's just awesome. I mean, he is for sure on the short list right now on the World Player of the Year, of the top 5 players in the world right now. He is. I mean,
he's thrilling to watch. And with Andre Pollard, they have a first 5 who is really controlling the game, and he's a threat. He's a threat both with the boot. He's a threat distributing the ball, and he's a threat himself attacking that channel. Right. Yep. So if you have a frail first 5 or fly half,
he's going to eat you up all day.
He's coming. He's coming down that channel, and he's coming down that channel continually. Right. So so that's my thought on them. I have no faith in the Wallabies whatsoever.
Yep.
The Wallabies pack is paper thin, right? It really is, and I don't see them being a threat, because the major teams that have serious packs know that the way to beat the Wallabies is to smash them up front, as the Springboks did, as the All Blacks did in the second test. Is you smash them up front for 30 minutes and it's game over, right? Yeah. Because past that first wind and that first level of players, I mean, they've got world-class players in Pocock and their captain, help me out here, Paul. Hooper, yes, right? But once you get past that and you get stuck into the tight 5, and then if you're prepared to grind them down, which England will do, which Ireland will do, which the All Blacks will do, so once you get them going backward and you've got them, they've got a brilliant and skilled backline. They don't have forwards, right?
Yep.
So I in that 3-match cycle you're talking about, Herman? No, I'm sorry.
All right, Paulie. Now he's googling.
Sorry, I'm not googling.
We finally give you some air, and then you start working.
Well, no, Ollie Brown's just come into the chat and gone, "Whoa, you guys are still live," and I'm like, "I know, I can't shut them up."
No, but I'm actually at work, but it's cool. So I need to finish this talk too now. But it's been a pleasure, gentlemen.
So, thank you everyone for who's been in the chat. It's been great to have you all there. Thank you so much. Yes, we've overrun slightly, or a lot. We're nearly an hour and a half, which is
TV channel. We're not a TV channel. There's not a show waiting after us.
Well, that's
No, there's not.
That's true.
And it's not every day that I get to talk to half of Herman's face.
Yeah. I don't understand this. I'm watching myself in the little screen on Skype. I'm right in the middle. I gotta see what it looks like. Later.
Yeah, I think it's and you're fine on YouTube. Don't worry. This is just purely
Right.
John's iPhone is just not quite it's not got a big ugh screen for you because you're such
Can't
a big
handle the
personality.
full glory of Herman's face.
Right.
It overloads, right?
Yeah.
So thank you everyone who's for joining us. Thank you everyone who's been in the chat. It's been great. Thank you for listening. Become a supporter of Driving Maul over at patreon.com/DrivingMaul so that maybe I can buy these guys a beer to say thank you for being on my shows and get round to all the other shows, all the other games and stuff that I do. So thank you everybody. Good night, and I'll be back tomorrow night with the All Blacks edition where Michael and Steve from Cornflakes Crib will be joining me.